What's up, friends? I think it's time for another deep dive, and today we're digging into the sonic essence of metal. It's a brand new release from Excite Audio, who I've featured on the channel before. They've brought me some of my favorite effects plugins, and just recently a sequencer that I've been using in a lot of my personal work as well. Today marks the release of a brand new sample-based synthesizer that has over 250 metal-focused sources. That's from glockenspiels to other metallophones, bells, textures, and synths. I want to give you a rundown of what this synth can do, but also throw in some real-world examples. So we're not just going to look at presets today, but we'll dive into some song ideas as well, so you can see what it sounds like amongst music. I've been doing a lot of sound design lately, and I think this synth is really going to speed up my workflow. Let's dive into it. Evolve Alloy. Now, don't think that this is all simple. We have this edit tab here, which unlocks a lot more modulation parameters. I'm going to come back to that later. Starting off, we have 4 sound sources, A, B, C, and D, which can be blended and controlled by this XY axis here, which we'll leave in the middle for now. We have 250 presets, which we'll get to in just a bit, and we have ways of interacting with this metal with the 4 macros here, from a transient shaper called sharpen, to adding distortion with rust, adding a kind of delay or feedback with vibrate here, and spring is of course our reverb. With our first preset, we get this sound. And if we pull our XY macro up to A, you can hear just that sound A source. Over to B, down to C, and over to D. Oh, that's a lovely like PS1 kind of sound. Digging into our presets, we can look at basses. Got some lovely bells here. There's some lovely textures found in the waterfall bells. This kind of thing for sound design, gorgeous. And if you don't want the pitch to be affected as you move across the keys, then you can just hit this button here. So this will turn off pitch tracking. So all my other sound sources will be affected by the pitch. But our Jacob's keys texture will stay in the same pitch across the keyboard. Keys has some of my favorite sounds. Once again, we've got some lovely texture here coming from sound D. I think the pad section gives a great example of sounds that blend both synths and samples. If you want to switch out between synth and sample, you just hit these tabs here, and you'll see that some of your options for modulation will change as well. Let's just listen to sound A. We're in sample here. We can affect the pitch, whether it be in its standard pitch or fine tuning. We can affect the tone. Do we want it to be darker or brighter? The pan, the velocity sensitivity, and the volume. We can also dictate whether the sample plays forwards or backwards. And then of course, pitch tracking, which we just had a look at. In synth, we can use the slider to adjust some of our wave shapes, or we can just hit the icons here. As before, we can manipulate the pitch and the panning, but we also have the option to adjust the unison and detune. Pads is actually a great place to get started with a real-world example. Let's look at a song. So a while back, I did a video on the kind of PS1 drum and bass sound, and if you haven't checked out that video, it's linked in the top right. I want to change that Serum sound to an Evolve Alloy sound. I think it will have a lot more kind of textural presence. I think for that PlayStation pad sound, you want something fairly noisy, so adding chords that sound like this isn't really going to stand out amongst all the other moving parts. So let's see what other pad sounds that we have. This I love, but it's very lo-fi. That's exactly the sound. Let's blend that. Okay, so sound B and sound A are similar, but they've just been fine-tuned a little bit. With sound B, I think I'm going to go for something a little sharper. There we go. This is fine, but let's again just add a little bit of buzz to that. We'll start to add these copper tones. Oh, that's lovely. Let's see how that sounds amongst our music. I want to have effect on all of these sounds together. So I'm going to open up the editor and come down to the bottom here where we can affect the ADSR. And I've linked A, B, C, and D so that when we decrease the attack, you can see that the same thing happens across all ADSRs. I want that sound to come in a lot quicker. Lovely. We can choose to modulate our synthesizer from the LFOs, envelopes, and XY pads here. And to have control on any modulation parameter, all we need to do is grab that thing and drag it to the macro or pot that you're trying to control. I want to create a more choppy sound of this synth. So what I'm going to do is control the LFO and link this to each of the volume pots. So we're dragging this up to volume on A, B, C, and D. We're going to create quite a fast rate of a choppy sound. We're going to have it start loud, end quiet, and the rate is going to be synced to 16th notes. This works brilliantly for an intro. Let's see how that sounds. I'm using the preset Cloud Surf here, and let's check out some of the macros. With the first macro, we're sharpening this metal, essentially a transient shaper. All the way to the left, we're going to have a softer sound. But as we turn that up, we get a harsher, sharper sound. With Rust, we're increasing the distortion. With Vibrate, we add a feedback to this. It's almost like a slapback delay. And with Spring, we add a very quick reverb shimmer. That's not the only effects that we have, as if we turn these down to taste, I'm gonna have this sharpen at like 30%. When we open up our editor, we've got two filters, which can be applied to all four sounds if we like. Perhaps filter 1 is a high pass, and it's only applied to sounds A and B. And filter 2 is only applied to sounds C and D. Perhaps this is a low pass filter. We're not just met with 3 effects, but if we turn the effects on and choose this drop-down menu, we can choose from 16 different effects, which once chosen, you can choose the order of this chain as well. At the very end, we have a limiter to ensure a safe kind of ceiling height. Let's mess with the macros and effects in the context of a song. Last week, we looked at the basics of a kind of future garage vibe, and this project is over at the Patreon also, along with our first example. Once I'd built that basic arrangement, I'd mentioned that there's definitely some room for a top line melody, which we can add with Evolve Alloy here. We're starting in A, and I've got this lovely bell tone here with lots of texture on sound D. So let's see what we can come up with. A, E, C, A, G, A. Let's see what that sounds like. And then maybe a different note on this G here. Let's go for D. Lovely. I want this to pop out the mix a little bit, so let's sharpen this with the first macro. That's going to pull the sustain down, but up the attack transient. And I don't think a little bit of distortion would hurt either. I think we could also swap out the compressor for some saturation here as well. I'm going to turn some of that noise down, or that textural sound. Yeah, that's really great. Oh, that reminds me, this episode is sponsored by DistroKid. I release all of my songs with DistroKid. It gets my music onto hundreds of platforms, even the newest ones cropping up. Sometimes I am caught in a pinch. If I don't have a release ready, I don't want to spend a lot of time mixing and mastering my music. So I put the final touches on with DistroKid's Mixia tool. With Mixia, you make sure that your track is dynamic and competitively loud, so it pops on all the music platforms. There are discounts in the description below. Let's get back to our episode. Some of these effects and textures are just amazing, like this old space station preset, which I'm not sure isn't mirrored off of the PS1 startup sound. You don't always want to use the presets that come with the synth, so if you want to change a sound, you can just drag a new sample over the waveform. I'm going to have this sound play an octave up, backwards, and I'm turning off pitch tracking because I don't want it to change across the keys. I've got a predicament in our third example that I think this can really help out with. So a while ago in my downtime, I was working on this one, and I think the track in orange is a bit of a problem area. It works, but it's just a bit boring. It's just a sample I took of a glass with some water in it pitched around, and I think that this could be more interesting. So why don't we add this to Evolve Alloy? So I think like a nice textural pluck or effect sound could work as our starting place. Okay, so this has some cool textures in it, but I don't like that lower sound. Let's see what sound that is. This one here. Let's drag our sample sound down into sound C and import that. Let's add our other sounds. Let's make this one a synth. I think that's much cooler. I think ADSR A needs to change with our attack coming straight in. Okay, let's make that a little bit harsher. And then let's maybe modulate some of macro D. So we're just going to pull envelope 1 over macro D here. And then when the note is played, it's going to follow this ADSR curve. And I'm going to do the same to the rust here. So there's just a little bit of distortion right at the end there. Over a really long course of time, we could actually kind of mangle that reverb to make that space much bigger. So we'll turn sync on for this and turn our rate up to, what, 4 bars? So there we have it, guys. That is Evolve Alloy, the first in a series of new sample-based synths that focus on the characteristics of one material. Is this something that you're going to be jumping into? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, let me know what you want to see in future videos. Thank you so much for swinging by, and I'll catch you guys next time.